This morning, President Trump sent the clearest signal yet on Iran. He went on Truth Social and pushed back hard against media reports claiming his chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Caine, opposes military action. Trump called the reports 100% incorrect. He said General Caine believes that if it comes to a military confrontation with Iran, it would be something easily won. And then he said the line that every foreign ministry in the world is now analyzing. I am the one that makes the decision. Welcome to the sand table. This is briefing number 5. First of all, don't forget to subscribe. Now let me walk you through what is actually happening here, because this is more than a social media post. This is strategic communication. Over the weekend, several media outlets ran stories citing anonymous sources who said General Caine had privately warned the White House about the risks of a prolonged military campaign against Iran. The reports claimed Caine raised concerns about significant U.S. casualties, strained air defenses, and overextended forces. Trump's response was direct and deliberate. He wrote, "Numerous stories from the fake news media have been circulating stating that General Daniel Caine is against us going to war with Iran. The story is 100% incorrect." He then made two things very clear. First, he said Caine believes a war with Iran would be easily won. And second, he dismissed media reports about limited strikes. He called them fake. Now think about what that second point means. 3 days ago, Trump himself said he was considering limited military action. Today, he is publicly rejecting the idea of limited strikes. That is not a contradiction. That is a strategic shift in messaging. If you are sitting in Tehran reading that post, you understand exactly what Trump is telling you. He is saying, do not plan for a small hit that you can absorb and then negotiate afterward. If this goes military, it goes all the way. That is the kind of message designed to maximize pressure heading into Thursday's talks in Geneva. This is the same approach Trump used in his first term. He walked away from the table with North Korea before Kim came back. He authorized the strike on Soleimani while simultaneously keeping the diplomatic door open. The pattern is consistent. Apply maximum pressure, make the other side believe you are willing to use force, and see if that changes their calculation. The Wall Street Journal confirmed that Caine did raise operational concerns within the Pentagon and the National Security Council. That is his job. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs is required by law to provide the president with his best military advice, including the risks. Every chairman in history has done this before a major military operation. That is how the system works. The president hears the risks, weighs them, and makes the call. What is different here is that Trump chose to address it publicly. He did not ignore the reports. He did not let them sit. He went directly to the American people and said, "My general is with me. The reports are wrong, and I make the decision." That is a president who wants no ambiguity about who is in charge and what direction this is heading. Whether you agree with the approach or not, the message to Tehran is unmistakable. The United States is not bluffing. The president has the information, he has the forces in position, and he is ready to act. Now let me show you something important about how the military decision is being structured inside the White House, because the details matter. Axios reported today that General Caine has been the primary military leader briefing Trump on Iran in recent weeks. At the same time, the CENTCOM commander, Admiral Brad Cooper, has not been in those meetings. He has not spoken directly to the president since the crisis began in January. Now, there are different ways to read this. Under previous administrations, the CENTCOM commander briefed the president directly on regional operations. General Eric Kurilla, Cooper's predecessor, briefed both Trump and Biden on Iran face-to-face. That was the standard model. The regional commander provides ground truth, and the chairman provides strategic advice. What we are seeing now is a more centralized model. The president is receiving his military counsel through a single channel, the chairman. Supporters of this approach argue it gives the president a cleaner, more unified picture. Critics argue it removes the operational detail that only the theater commander can provide. Here is why this matters in practical terms. Caine's role as chairman is to advise the president on military strategy across all theaters. Cooper's role is to provide the specific operational reality of the Middle East. The logistics, the timing windows, the enemy's likely response, the force requirements. These are two different kinds of information, and both are essential to making the right call. A senior administration official confirmed to Axios that the president has not spoken to Cooper. The White House has not commented on why. It may be a deliberate choice to streamline the process. It may be a reflection of Trump's preference for dealing directly with his top appointees. But it is worth noting because the man who would actually execute a strike order is not in the room where the decision is being discussed. Now, the second development inside the White House. Vice President J.D. Vance has been raising strategic questions during internal deliberations. Sources say Vance is asked about the risk of long-term entanglement, specifically whether a military campaign could turn into the kind of prolonged Middle Eastern commitment that both Trump and Vance ran against. This is not opposition, this is due diligence. Vance is asking the questions that any serious policymaker should ask before committing American forces. What happens after the first strike? What does Iran do in response? How long does this last? What is the exit strategy? These are exactly the questions that were not asked before Iraq, and that failure haunted American foreign policy for 20 years. So the internal picture looks like this. Trump is projecting maximum strength and resolve. Caine is providing military advice and, as any good chairman should, making sure the president understands the risks. Cooper is running theater operations but not briefing the president directly. And Vance is asking the hard strategic questions about what comes after. This is how national security decisions should be debated. The fact that there are different perspectives inside the room is not weakness. It is how you avoid catastrophic mistakes. What matters is who makes the final call. And Trump made that clear this morning. I am the one. Now let me take you inside Iran. Because while Washington debates the decision, the Iranian people are making a statement of their own. For the third consecutive day, Iranian students took to university campuses across the country. But today was a significant escalation. Protests spread to at least 10 universities simultaneously. This is no longer isolated. This is a coordinated national student movement. At the University of Tehran, students gathered at the Faculty of Foreign Languages and held photographs of Raha Bolulapur, a 23-year-old student of Italian literature who was killed by security forces during the January protests. They chanted, "For every person killed, 1,000 will rise." At Al-Zahra University, the all-women's institution in Tehran, students began their protest at 11 in the morning. They chanted, "We did not give our lives to compromise nor to praise the murderous leader." When besiege agents tried to infiltrate the crowd, students surrounded them and forced them to retreat. At Sharif University, one of Iran's top engineering schools, students chanted, "This year is the year of blood. Sayyid Ali will be overthrown," referring to Supreme Leader Khamenei by his first name, which in Iranian culture is a deliberate act of disrespect. Protests also erupted at Amir Kabir University, Isfahan University of Technology, Ferdowsi University in Mashhad, Iran University of Science and Technology, and Qaj Nasir. The pattern is the same everywhere. Students gathering, chanting, holding photographs of the dead, and confronting security forces. The regime's response today was an escalation of its own. Reports emerged that the University of Tehran blocked certain students from entering campus. Security personnel held lists of names, turning students away at the gates. This means the regime is now compiling intelligence on student activists in real time and using it to restrict access to education. That is the move of a government that feels threatened. Now here is the critical dimension. A name is being chanted across multiple campuses that changes the political equation entirely. Reza Pahlavi, the son of Iran's last Shah, an exile living in the United States for nearly 50 years. Students chanted, "Pahlavi will return," and "Long live the king" at several universities. Pahlavi has been building momentum. 2 weeks ago, 250,000 people rallied in his support at the Munich Security Conference. On February 14th, diaspora rallies drew 350,000 each in Toronto and Los Angeles. Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff met with Pahlavi at the direction of the president, and Trump himself said that regime change would be the best thing that could happen for Iran. But inside Iran, the picture is more complicated. Not everyone on the streets supports Pahlavi. At some universities, students chanted, "Death to the oppressor, be it the Shah or the leader." That is a deliberate rejection of both the current theocracy and any return to monarchy. Nobel laureate Narges Mohammadi, speaking from prison, has called Pahlavi's movement the opposition against the opposition. What you are looking at is a country with at least 3 competing visions for its future. First, the current theocratic regime, fighting to hold power through force. Second, the monarchist movement behind Pahlavi, gaining strength in the diaspora and now visible inside the country. Third, the secular Republican movement that wants neither mullahs nor kings, just a democratic Iran. This matters strategically because even if the regime collapses, what follows is not automatic stability. It is a country of 90 million people pulling in 3 different directions. That is something Washington and Jerusalem need to understand before making decisions that could accelerate that collapse. Now let me show you what moved in the last 12 hours outside of Iran, because the signals are stacking up. The United States Embassy in Beirut, Lebanon, began evacuating non-essential personnel and family members today. Staff were transported out via Rafiq Hariri International Airport. A State Department official described the move as a precaution amid expected regional developments. That phrase, expected regional developments, is diplomatic language for, we are preparing for something. Lebanon sits directly in the line of fire because Hezbollah, weakened but not eliminated, could launch rockets into Israel if a U.S.-Iran conflict begins. The evacuation follows the same pattern we saw before major U.S. military operations in the region. You move your people to safety first. In Jerusalem, Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the Knesset with a carefully worded statement. He said Israel is facing very complex and challenging days. He said ties with the United States have never been closer. And he warned Iran that any attack on Israel would be met with a heavy price. When Netanyahu uses the phrase complex and challenging days in the context of Iran, he is managing public expectations. He is telling the Israeli public to be ready without saying exactly what for. This is a prime minister in preparation mode. On the opposition side, Yair Lapid told the AIPAC conference in Washington that Israel will never allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons and called for military action. When both the government and the opposition in Israel publicly agree on military action, that is not politics, that is national consensus. Now the diplomatic calendar. 2 major moves today. First, Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit to Israel has been delayed again. It was originally scheduled for February 28th, then it moved to Saturday. Now it has been pushed to March 2nd. A State Department official said the schedule remains subject to change. Rubio's visit was expected to be the final coordination meeting between Washington and Jerusalem before any potential military action. The delay may signal that the Geneva talks on Thursday are being given more room to produce results. Second, and this is the biggest diplomatic development of the day, the 3rd round of U.S.-Iran nuclear talks has been confirmed for Thursday in Geneva. Oman's foreign minister announced it. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will represent the United States. Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi told media today that he expects progress. Iran is expected to submit a comprehensive written proposal before the meeting. That document will be the most consequential piece of paper in this entire crisis. If it addresses uranium enrichment in a way that gives Washington something to work with, the diplomatic track stays alive. If it falls short, Thursday may be the last round of talking. On the threat side, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazim Garibabadi spoke at the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva today. He warned that any U.S. strike, regardless of scale, would be met with a ferocious response. He said the consequences would not remain confined to one country. This is Iran's way of saying, if you hit us, everyone in the region pays the price. It is a deterrence message aimed at the Gulf states, at Israel, and at anyone hosting American military forces. Now let me connect something that most analysts are not putting together, because there is a domestic dimension to this crisis that feeds directly into the Iran timeline. Last Friday, the Supreme Court struck down Trump's emergency tariffs in a 6-3 ruling. The court said the president exceeded his authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. 2 justices appointed during Trump's first term, Gorsuch and Barrett, voted with the majority. Trump responded forcefully. He called the ruling a disgrace and immediately signed a new executive order imposing tariffs under a different legal authority. He made clear he will not stop fighting for the trade policies he was elected to implement. Now, here is the connection. When a president faces a major domestic setback, particularly one from his own appointees on the court, the political dynamics shift. Some international relations analysts, including a professor at the London School of Economics this weekend, have suggested that domestic pressure can accelerate foreign policy timelines. The theory is straightforward. A decisive military action changes the conversation. It puts the president on offense. It rallies public support around the commander-in-chief. I am not saying that is what is happening. I am saying it is a factor worth watching. The Supreme Court ruling added a new variable to an already complex equation. Now, before I give you the decision matrix for this week, I need to show you something that almost nobody is covering. Because while the entire world watches Iran, something is moving on the other side of the planet. In the last 72 hours, China deployed 3 additional warships to the South China Sea, including a Type 055 Renhai-class guided missile destroyer, one of the most advanced surface combatants in the Chinese fleet. Satellite imagery from open-source tracking shows the vessels departed Zhanjiang Naval Base and are now operating near the Spratly Islands. This is not routine. Here is why. The United States currently has 2 carrier strike groups committed to the Middle East. The USS Gerald R. Ford is approaching the Suez Canal from the Mediterranean. The USS Harry S. Truman is already in the Arabian Sea. Each carrier strike group brings a dozen escort warships with it. That means 2 of America's 11 carrier strike groups are now locked into the Iran theater. The Pacific Fleet, which is responsible for deterring China, is operating with reduced coverage. Beijing knows this, and Beijing is testing the gap. China's move is straight from the strategic playbook. When your adversary is focused on one theater, you probe in another. We saw the same pattern in 2003 when North Korea accelerated its nuclear program while the U.S. was committed to Iraq. We saw it again in 2014 when Russia moved on Crimea while the world was focused on ISIS. The South China Sea matters because it is the most contested waterway on Earth. 40% of global trade passes through it. Taiwan's security depends on it. And the U.S. has treaty obligations with the Philippines, Japan, and Australia that require credible naval presence. If the Iran situation escalates into a sustained military campaign, the question becomes, can the United States maintain credible deterrence in 2 oceans simultaneously? That is the question that keeps the Pentagon up at night. And that is the question China is asking right now by putting those 3 warships in the water. This is a dimension of the Iran crisis that goes beyond the Middle East. Every decision made about Iran has consequences in the Pacific, and every move China makes in the Pacific affects the calculus on Iran. We will be tracking this in upcoming briefings. Now let me put it all together, because this week is the most consequential week of this crisis so far. What we know for certain is this: Trump faces 2 major stages where Iran policy will be front and center. Tuesday, the State of the Union address. This is the president's biggest platform. He will stand before Congress and the nation and lay out his priorities. Watch the language on Iran very carefully. If he frames Iran as an imminent threat to American national security, that is the groundwork for action. If he highlights the diplomatic process and signals patience, the timeline extends. Thursday, Geneva, 3rd round of talks. Witkoff and Kushner meet Iranian negotiators. Iran's written proposal arrives on the table. If it contains meaningful concessions on enrichment, the diplomatic window stays open. If it does not, Thursday could be the last day of negotiations. Friday through the weekend. This is where it gets dangerous. Rubio was supposed to be in Israel by now. He will not arrive until March 2nd. The gap between Geneva and Rubio's arrival is empty. If the talks fail on Thursday, there is nothing on the calendar to slow things down. And the military picture is ready. The USS Gerald R. Ford is now in the eastern Mediterranean, approaching the Suez Canal. Once it transits south, both carrier strike groups will be operational in the region within days. Over 100 combat aircraft are deployed. The bases are supplied. The target packages are prepared. The infrastructure for a major operation is in place. Meanwhile, 3 Chinese warships are probing the South China Sea. And the only person who decides what happens next made his position clear this morning. Now the intelligence gap. Here is what we are tracking that has not been confirmed yet. Satellite imagery from the last 48 hours shows unusual vehicle activity at 3 Iranian military installations that were not active 2 weeks ago. We are still analyzing the coordinates and cross-referencing with known Iranian air defense batteries. If those sites are what we think they are, it changes the target calculus significantly. That analysis will be in briefing number 6. If you have been here since briefing 1, you now understand this crisis in a way most people do not. If you are new, the first 4 briefings are in the description. They are the context for everything that happens this week. Tomorrow night, the State of the Union. Thursday, Geneva. Friday, the window opens. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. I will see you at the next briefing.